Record. Petewashte relatives, Valeria Big Eagle here, Executive Director, Friends of the Children-He Sapa, also known as Lakota, guiding our youth through the Lakota way of life through our mentoring program. And today I bring you Richard Two Dogs. He's our cultural and spiritual advisor, and he works with our youth and our children and our families that we work with. And so it's an honor to have Rick here today, and he's going to be giving a teaching about the Hanblecia ceremony. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to you, and Wopila Tanka for giving us and passing on this knowledge to us so that we can continue to reconnect with our Lakota way of life. Wopila.
Wopila. Open up my PowerPoint here. So bear with me. Let me know if you could see the screen.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll talk about Hanblecia today, and it's translated from our language into English several different ways, but one that I've heard was crying for a dream. So this is a story. This is a picture of the holy man Nicholas Black Elk, whose name was Black Elk, but when he came onto the reservation, they asked everybody to they had to take a English name. So he was baptized by the Jesuits down in Red Cloud School or Holy Rosary Mission at the time, and it was a saint named Nicholas it was his feast day, so they gave him the name Nicholas. So his name was Nicholas Black Elk, but he carried the name of his father, who was also Black Elk, Hicha Sapa, or sometimes some people say Sapa. That's another way to say elk. So his name was Black Elk. And some of you who've written or read his book, it's called Black Elk Speaks, and it talks about his vision as a young man. He suddenly took ill at the age of about 12 years old, and he got sick, and he went up into the spirit world, and the spirits of the six directions took him all over the universe, and they showed him different visions and powers. So he lay like he was dead for 12 days, but his spirit was traveling. And just when they thought he was dead, he would have no pulse. So they'll think he's dead, then he'll have a pulse again. So the spirits were keeping him alive while they were teaching him. So he traveled for 12 days and returned as a young man. But he kept his vision to himself for a long time, and he never did tell the complete vision in entirety till he met the man John Neihart, and it was kind of a almost, I wouldn't say accidental, but it was a coming together of this poet laureate from Nebraska named John Neihart, and he was writing a book, and it's a series of poems inside this book, and it's called The Cycle of the West. That book is still available. So when he got to the part about the life and how Crazy Horse was a part of the history of our people, he came to the Pine Ridge Reservation, and he went to the agency superintendent in Pine Ridge, and so there was a bunch of there was some old men sitting outside on the front steps. So he said, if you want to meet somebody, you'll have to talk with them. So the agent went outside with this John Neihart, and those old men were sitting there. So he said, I want to speak with somebody who knew Crazy Horse personally, because I'm writing a story about him. So he said they were discussing something among themselves, and then they came up with the name of the man here, the holy man, the Blackout. So they said he knew him personally, and he knows a lot of histories. So there was a elder gentleman sitting there. His name was Flying Hawk, and he was from the community of Manderson where Blackout lived. So he went and he said, "Will you be able to accompany me over there?" So he said, "Yes, I could take you to his home." So those of you that are familiar with the Pine Ridge Reservation, it's about a good maybe 35 to maybe 40 miles from Pine Ridge to the community of Manderson. So they got in John Nyhart's car and they left. And in those days, there was no gravel roads, no paved roads. So it kind of took them a while. And they had to go through, John Nyhart talks about these roads that were deeply rutted. And they finally arrived at Mr. Blackout's turnoff. And when they turned in, all these old men on ponies on their horses, their hair flying, and they had hats on, and they start chasing the car because cars very seldom ever came to the community. They hardly ever saw cars. Their curiosity got the best of them, I guess. So they rode along, galloped along, and then when it turned up towards Blackout's house, then they followed along. But I guess they were being nosy, but they didn't want to intrude. So uh, when Mr. Nyhart pulled up with the gentleman Flying Hawk, Blackout came out uh, from under an arbor. He was sitting under an arbor, and he came out and he was squinting at both Flying Hawk and Mr. Nyhart, and he said to Mr. Nyhart, he said, "What took you so long? I've been waiting for you." So I guess Mr. Nyhart was kind of taken aback, kind of I guess he kind of was surprised. And here he said, "I had a dream that you were going to come and you were going to save my vision." So he asked him what he meant by that. So he said, "I'll tell you." So then John Nyhart said through the interpreter, Mr. Flyinghawk, who was bilingual, could speak English, he said, "I came to write a story about Crazy Horse, and they said he knew him." So Mr. Blackout said, "Yes, I knew him. He's my uncle," he said. "Well, yeah, he's my uncle," he said. So he said, but he didn't seem to be interested in speaking about Crazy Horse. He wanted to do something else. He could tell, he could sense it. So he said, I will speak with you, but not in length. I'll only speak with you briefly because what I need to do," Mr. Blackout said, "is narrate my life to you, which is part of the great vision that I had, and I want it written down so that the future generations will read it and know about our people and our spirituality and our powers." So, in the meantime, Mr. Nyhart passed out cigarettes to all those old men that were setting their backs to them but listening. So he passed out cigarettes, so they were all smoking. So he said, "I'll return in the spring," Mr. Nyhart said. "And so you can narrate your vision to me and your life story." So I guess they communicated throughout the winter time that winter through letters. And even though Mr. Blackout couldn't read or write, his grandchildren would read the letters to him, and then he would dictate back to them what he wanted to tell Mr. Nyhart. So in the writing of the book, Mr. Nyhart returned in the following May, and they set up a teepee for Mr. Nyhart. And uh, Blackhawk said, "According to our protocol," he said, "I can't tell you this vision unless," he said, "I have to adopt you as my son first." So they did a big adoption ceremony, a Hunka ceremony, and he made John Nyhart his son. And so Mr. Nyhart provided, uh, he bought a cow from a local rancher and he provided beef for the um, hookah ceremony, and they even had a celebration with it. So they had like what you would call a powwow today. So the dancers came and singers and people feasted and they got this done. And then soon afterwards, he spent little over a month living with Mr. Blackout, John Nyhart did, and he narrated his life to him. So that's how it was preserved in this book called Blackout Speaks. So to the people listening, if you haven't read this book, suggest you read it because it's an excellent book. But we'll move on here now. So when you break down the word Hanblecia, I always like to break down the Lakota word because of any words, but because a lot of our words have a deeper meaning. And I think a lot of the indigenous people throughout the world with their languages, um, like here in the United States, I know the indigenous people have the languages inside embedded in the languages, the different, the deeper meaning of what it means. So, if you look at a dictionary and you see Hanblecia, then it's gonna say, or if you say you look in a dictionary and it says Hanblecia, then you get the translation of Vision Quest. But you break the word down further, it says ha, which is nighttime, or ihumble. Ha is short for ihumble. Nighttime is ha happy. So ha is kind of a shorter breakdown of the word because when you talk Lakota, there's something called fast speech. So a lot of words are broken down like that because of that. For for the sake of the language flowing, it kind of keeps a rolling, flowing motion. So and then so ha is nighttime or from the word ihumble, a dream. Ble is like a direction, and then chea is like cry or beseechment. So beseechment is kind of when you break the word down, it's kind of like in English, it's kind of like asking for something or trying to almost like kind of like a form of begging for it or asking for it in a pitiful way. And that's my understanding anyway. And people, other people might have their own translations too. So the word you break it down, Hanblecia, is this is the deeper meaning. So the reasons for Hanblecia is a Woi Hamble, a dream to go seek a vision, a Woki chosen, a sacred promise and a fulfillment of a request. So in the doctoring ceremonies, a lot of times there's a scene called a Woki chosen. So you will hear people pray sometimes in Lakota language, sometimes in English, and they say, My relative is very sick, and I want them to live, and I want them to get their health back. So in return, I will suffer for them if this is granted. So it could either be done in the Sundance, or it could be done on a Hamblecha. So this person goes up anywhere from 1 to 4 days to suffer, go without food, water in place because you're asking for something. And Wokichans could be a lot of things. It could be Hamblecha, it could be Sundance. You can offer flesh. You also, part of the Wokichunze is the Wopila ceremony, or giving thanks. So these are all parts of it. Whatever you do, I've even seen people come and say, well, at Sundance, on the day they bring the tree, I will feed the people. So that's a part of the Wokichunze too. So a lot of times the dreams, the Woihambele will also come unexpected. So when the holy man places you on the hill, he says, try to remember everything that you've seen and everything that you heard, everything that you experienced, and everything that you felt, because it's all a part of the learning and the teaching. What the spirit people are trying to bring to you is some kind of a message. So long ago, when a young man reached a certain age when his voice changed, then they would put him on a vision quest also to learn what is his direction in life. So in those days, will he be a holy man? Will he be a warrior? Will he be a hunter? Whatever that he's meant to be, what he's destined to be will be shown to him at that time. So I tell young people today, you can go and seek a vision to find out what you're going to be today. Maybe you're meant to be a teacher, or maybe you're meant to be a lawyer or a doctor in the Western medicine way. Maybe you'll be a researcher or something like that too, which is all important to our people to this day. Or you might have a dream to help people, doctor people, or you might have a dream to be someone that they call it waslolia, to know things, what Western society calls a psychic, those things. And also like Oayet Hokatakia, we say, seeking answers to your future or your role in life and so forth. And then the bottom one is iglu washte. So you Hanblecia to a lot of times to if you broke a promise, like say you broke a promise to Sundance, or maybe you broke a promise and so you have to make it right again. So you do that, you go through this igluashte ceremony. So a lot of times young men run from the Sundance because of the severity of it. So in order for them to come back, many holy men, medicine men would say that you have to go in on a hill and pray and sacrifice, and then the spirit people will let you come back. A lot of times, if they feel that you were sincere in what you was doing. So in the protocol, woa echung or wo echung in our language is protocol, how someone does something. So each holy man is different in their ways, how they put you on a hill, how they do it. I know of one holy man that when you come out of the sweat lodge, he covers you with a blanket and you're covered and you don't know where you're going a lot of times. And when you're there, when he finally takes you to where you're going to be at, it's like you're totally almost lost because you didn't look out and watch stuff. And so each one has different ways. I know of a holy man that before he puts you on a hill, you have to fast from the day before. So the day you're going to go on a hill, all of that day you don't eat or drink. So you start your fast a day early. And you don't talk to anybody unless it's somebody that's helping you. So you designate someone to help you. It could be your mother, your wife, or somebody, and then you only converse with them. And then when you go to the inipi, the sweat lodge, for the purification ceremony before you go on a hill, then you're you're not allowed to talk to anybody but the holy man and his helpers. So each holy man has his own wokage. So that's wokage means the tobacco ties, uh, the flags, the waonyapi, the prayer cloths, as they say. And each holy man has his own way of like the numbers and the colors. So uh, there's a large variety of this. I've been to a lot of holy men and prayed with them at their altars, and there's all kinds of different colors. So I've heard arguments in modern times about you have to use black, red, yellow, white, and then people will even argue about it, about the colors. But because one person used that doesn't mean that another person has to use that. It's all according to that holy man's dream. So I know of a holy man that used purple for the West instead of black, or some holy men use blue. I know of a holy man that uses gray, the color gray for the West. So it's up to everybody, and I think we fall into a lot of times saying that, well, they do it this way over there, and they did it this way over there. So there's differences on how you set the altar also. So you can't go to someone and say, "Oh, but that's not the way Fool's Crow put me on the hill," or "That's not how Leonard Crow Dog put me on the hill." This person is different. Also, the older holy men will caution you to make your own zapi, your own vow. So I've learned from my uncle Joe Chips and different ones. My grandfather, when he put people on the hill, he says, "You choose the days." Because if you have the grandfathers, the spirits choose your days, then they might say 7 days so that you'll be up there for a long time. So you know yourself and you know what you can do. So he said, choose your days, anywhere from 1 to 4 days. But you choose it. Don't let them choose it because they're gonna make you do it the really extreme, difficult way. So this is a story I'm gonna tell that I heard from Grandfather Foolscrow himself in his ceremony. So when I was a young man, I went to his ceremonies because my uncle, my mother's first cousin, his name was Amos Lonehill, was married to Foolscrow's daughter. Her name was Marie. So from there, I have numerous cousins that some are still alive. I think all of the males died, but the females, a couple of them are still alive. So I went to his ceremonies and I was fortunate to know the language, so I listened to him. And his story is that he went to this man first, and his name was Choke Cherry Seed, and he was the son of Black Fox, who was a well-known holy man. And as a young warrior, he distinguished himself at the Battle of Little Bighorn. And this Black Fox had a son named Choke Cherry Seed, who was a holy man also. So he took Grandpa Foolscrow on his first vision quest around the early 1900s. And so he took him on a hill and he said, "You were destined to be a holy man and doctor of your people, and you were destined to be an interpreter for the spirits." So he was an orphan. His mother died at birth. So his father and his aunties pretty much raised him. And so he didn't have a mother. And so this choke cherry seed put him on the Hanblecia, and he said, "How they're gonna come to you is they're gonna teach you a song." He said, "So when you learn this song, listen really good." He said, "When you learn this song, you will sing it, and your spirit helpers will come to you. That's how they will know you. That's how they will communicate with you." So he went up on the hill the first time, and he went for 4 days and 4 nights. And he said, "I had a really difficult time. It felt like I was going to die." He told in his ceremony. And in the first time I went, on the third night, he said, I was approached by my mother. And she came and she was crying, and she said that she was sorry, even though it couldn't be helped, that she couldn't be there for him. But she told him, "Everything you went through so far, I was beside you." And she pretty much told him about his life, what he did. "Remember the time you were sick, and whenever you were sick and you were really sick, I was there that time." He said, "And did you wake up and remember me smudging with cedar? Did you smell the cedar?" So he said, "Yes." So he said, "Yeah." She said, "I was there at that time," like that. So he found comfort in that he knew that she was there. So he went to that third night, and then the next day, um, he he listened and listened each night, but he did not hear a song. So when the holy man's chokecherry seed came to him, and to take him down the hill, he took him to the sweat lodge, and he gave him a little bit water to drink, and then they hauled the rocks into the sweat lodge. And he asked him, he said, "Did you hear the song?" And he said, "No." He said, "I didn't hear a song." So he said, "The spirit said they gave you the song, that it was there." He said, but I didn't hear anything. So this happened to him for two other times. So he finally, on the fourth time, the holy man took Trace. He told him, "This is the last time you can go." He said, "It's fourth time. You don't hear a song this time, then it's not. Maybe it's not meant to be." So he said he cried and he felt really bad. So when he took him to the hill, he stayed up there. And again, first night he didn't hear nothing. Second night he didn't hear nothing. Third night he didn't hear nothing. Fourth night he didn't hear nothing. So he said around what's from judging from the stars and their positions, it was about around midnight. He was crying and he said, if it's not meant to be, then it wasn't meant to be. So he said he went to sleep and he was still crying. And he suddenly awoke and it was getting light way in the east, kind of faintly. The light was showing of the sun, but it was still dark. So he laid there and here he could hear the whistling of the wind through the trees. So he listened and here it sounded like a voice singing. So he started singing with the voice and that he heard and he started to sing and eventually he made out words. He could hear words. So he added the words to the song and he started to sing and he kept going till pretty soon he was singing the song. So he sang it over and over and over. And he said till all the way till daylight. Then the wind stopped and the sun came up, but he kept singing the song. So when the holy man Choke Cherry Seed came after him and took him down, and he gave him a little water to drink. Then they went into the sweat lodge. He said, "Did you hear the song?" So uh, Grandfather Foolscrow said yes, and he sang the song. And so he said, "Yes, that's the song they gave you." So he said when he sang the song on the fourth verse, he said his ears made a sound like when he come down from the mountains, and it made a hissing sound. He said then he went like his ears opened and he could hear really clear. And then he said could hear a man talking. He said, "I've been talking to you all this time, but I'm glad you can now hear me." So that's how he began his career as a holy man, and that's how he contacted the spirits. So I heard this story. So whenever he has his ceremonies in his Hanblecia, when he tells his vision, he talks about this, how this incident happened, and how that how he expected to hear a voice singing to him, and that's what he looked for. But each time he went, the song was in those pine trees with the wind whistling through the pine trees. And he didn't think to listen for that because he said, I remember hearing that each time, but I was waiting for a man's voice to sing to me. So that's really an important lesson to learn. So that's why they say, watching Sapa, be attentive of everything around you because there's all kinds of messages from the spirit people a lot of times. But we don't see them because we're not trained. We don't look for things like that a lot of times. And then this is the story of Mila Hanska Kashunke. This man is my grandfather. Um, he's a sister to my grandmother. Her name was Crow Woman. And so they were siblings from the same mother. So, and their father was Sitting Bear, and their mother's name was Her Good Iroquois. Uh, so that's where they came from. But my grandfather, Sitting Bear, had four wives, and this grandpa here, when he lived, he had seven wives, and he had an average of four children from each wife. So he had around close to right around 28 or 29 children. So there's a lot of relatives from this grandfather today. But how he got his dream and his vision was when he was a young man, like Blackout, around his early teens, he suddenly took sick and he was lying in a teepee and it was in the winter time, about around early November. And he said he went in and out of a coma. And then at one point during the night, He said during the time of his illness, suddenly his spirit flew out of the teepee and went up into the stars. And he said he went to the east and there was a real bright star, and he went there. And he said, at that star, he said there was bears, the motho ayate, bears were living there, but they were living but like humans. They dressed like humans and they lived in teepees. And he said that they took him into this teepee and they showed him. He said, this is the way you will doctor. We will give you this ability to doctor people. So in our way of categorizing the different healers, he was what they call a Yakob Wapie. Yakob is like to suck something up. Wapie is to doctor. So he had the ability to suck sickness out of people. So these bears showed him different herbs, what they look like, and he said these herbs all looked fresh, like they were freshly picked. So they showed him the top, which we say in our language, who also means legs. Hutka is the root. So they showed him these medicines. They showed him 7 medicines, and they said, you will use these. And they showed him each medicine for what it's for. So one of them was for wounds. So when somebody has a bullet wound, you apply this medicine, it will bring that lead out of the wound and bring it to the surface. So he had that medicine, and he had medicines for like if the wound went through the body, and so how to close it and stop the bleeding. So he had these medicines, and each medicine has a song. So to this day, I use 3 of his medicines, and I use the 3 songs that there was given to him. Those were handed down to me by his son, Thomas American Horse. So when he returned back to Earth from that star, those bears told him, he said, this star that you came to is called Oehakela, meaning the last one, meaning the last star. So this November, if you look to the east, and I don't know the English name for it, but this star arises around early November. It's a bright star and it comes up. I've never done the research to find out how you say it in English or like that, like through my research. I haven't found that, but we know it in our Tioshpai as Oehakela, the last star to come. So when that star appears, I always make offerings in memory of my grandfather here. And so he lived all the way to 1912. He was a well-known leader and a holy man. He was if you read the book by James Walker, Lakota Belief and Ritual, he's also in this book also. He quotes him in his book. So he lived up to 1912. My father was 1 year old when his great grandfather died. So that's how he got his vision. So he was a bear healer. So the Tioshpai, where he lived and was a part of in Kyle, the community of Kyle in American Horse Creek, they called those people Moto'ayate, the bear people, because of my grandfather here. And he passed his knowledge on into 2 different men. So these men became healers also. So there was a lot of healers, especially bear healers, Moto'apia, that healed with the bear medicine. There was a lot of them in that Tioshpai, so that's how they got the name. Because before that they were called Iashicha, so the bad talkers, but they became the Matro'eate after that. So that's how he got his vision and became a holy man. So this knowledge was passed down uh, among our people. So he was an expert at wounds, and there's a story of him how when James Walker came to interview these holy men, uh, they called him to a meeting and he wanted to talk with them. He said, I need your help because there's a tuberculosis epidemic among the people here, which was there during the late 1800s, early 1900s. So I want to work with you, holy men, to um, see how we can fight this epidemic. So they said they'll work with him, but they said in order for them to work with him, they had to induct him into their societies. So there was a man, a holy man named Slow Bull, who saw the vision 2 days and nights on how to induct him in. So he had a dream to make this James Walker buffalo hat and how to paint him. So they would they made him a buffalo hat and they painted him, and then they prayed with him. First they went in the sweat lodge, and then they went in the teepee. Then they prayed with him and they painted him and they put the buffalo hat on him. So they inducted him into the Buffalo Dreamers Society. So that's how they were able to, I guess, trade knowledge with him. So, but in one of the ceremonies, they would bring people that were actually sick. So they brought a woman who had tuberculosis. So they had my grandfather here doctor her. So he sang his songs, and he had a buffalo horn that he put to the back of her between her shoulder blades, and he sucked, made a sucking sound, and here there was a gurgling. So he spit into this wooden bowl, and here there was like phlegm and pus and everything. And so he said that is the tuberculosis sickness. So he did it 4 times, and on the fourth time, he got everything out. And here, that woman could breathe easily, and he started to feel better. She said, so he cured her of that tuberculosis, and that doctor James Walker witnessed it. So he has all these notes and what he studied under these holy men, and I think it's now at the University of Colorado archive. So he did also a study of the children on the reservation, and one of the things that he determined, and some of the doctors from Pine Ridge that have access to that knowledge or the what he compiled as in his research, it shows how we were taller than what we are now as a people. So the children, there's evidence of young men and young women that are like 12 to 13 to 14 years old that were already 6 foot and over. So we were a tall people. That's one of the research findings. And and he documented the progress of the tuberculosis epidemic that came upon us, and a lot of the medicine men healed it. Um, and he tried to teach them about germs and bacteria, but they already know. So they said my grandfather here sucked when he sucked on that woman's back. He said, "Wahut kala," he said, and he pointed at what he sucked out, and here you could see these worms inside there. So James Walker took them and he looked under a microscope, and here that was the bacteria that caused tuberculosis. So he thought he was going to teach the holy men about germs and stuff, and they already knew about it. So this is how they worked together with this man, and he wrote several books. There's one called Lakota Society, and then the one that's called Belief and Ritual. So you can find those books on Amazon or wherever. So next, we'll talk about the vision of Tatanka Yotake, which is commonly known as Sitting Bull, Grandfather Sitting Bull. So this is the story about his vision before the Battle of the Little Bighorn, maybe uh, a few weeks before the battle in early June. The Lakotas were moving, and already they knew the soldiers were coming. There was some Dakotas coming down from Canada to help the Lakotas fight because there was an impending war coming. And they sensed it and they knew it because there was an order sent out by the government to round up all the people that were still off the designated reservations, and they termed them hostiles. So they tried a campaign in the winter, but it failed because the soldiers got overcome by the cold, and they were overcome by hunger because their supply of food ran out, so they had to turn back. So the ones that were coming from Canada spotted George Armstrong Custer's group coming from Amanda and North Dakota. So they spotted them, but they skirted around them and they pulled in, and they warned the Lakota that there's a group of soldiers coming towards them from the northeast. So they were aware of them. So anyway, on June 3rd, which is early by today's standards of a Sundance, but on June 3rd, they camped right by this Deer Medicine Rocks, and this is on the Rosebud River. This is about 15 miles from north of the community of Lame Deer, Montana, where the Cheyennes live. So this right at this Deer Medicine Rocks is where they had the Sundance. So we're looking at this picture. So we're probably close to where the Sundance area took place. The lodge, I guess, stood there according to an elderly gentleman that owns this land now, but he allows native people to go there and to pray. So they had their Sundance there on starting on June 4th, 5th, and then 6th. And on June 6th is when Sitting Bull fell down. He danced from the evening all the way to around 2 the next afternoon after he cut 100 pieces of flesh from each arm. And he danced continuously till he fell and he fainted. That's when he saw the soldiers falling into camp. So this group of rocks is called Lakļol Wičhoļ'an, the rocks through which the light comes. So it's interesting because this man that owns this land, he knew a lot of the holy men, so-called holy men. He said, and I watch, and the real holy men come, and they come to a certain place and look at it. He said, and these other men that claim to be holy men don't even know. He said, they don't even go to that certain spot. He said, so when I went there, I knew about that place where the sun shines through the rocks. So I looked for it right away because my grandfather told me about it. And here he said, you're either a medicine man or you knew people that were true medicine men. So I didn't say nothing. I just nodded my head, but I knew where to look for that, where the sun comes through, shines through these rocks. So on these rocks are carved the prophecies of our people. So to the left, you're looking at to your left, the carvings go all the way around, and so it shows everything that's happened to our people and is still going to happen to our people. So what is interesting is it also shows that there will be a suicide epidemic among our people, which is happening now or happened in the recent past and is still happening because carved on that rock is the picture of a person hanging by a rope. And it also has the prediction of the Battle of the Little Bighorn and also the depiction of the Battle of Rosebud, which happened a week apart. So the Battle of Rosebud happened first on June 17th, and that's where Crazy Horse and his warriors fought against General Crook. And there's a lot of controversy going back and forth that Crazy Horse did not defeat General Crook, but he did take him out of the fight for the rest of the summer because he retreated and camped to where Sheridan, Wyoming is now. It's called the Goose Creek Wakabadis. He camped there and he stayed out of the battle. So he wasn't there when they fought Custer to the south at the Little Bighorn. He wasn't there. He was taken out of the battle. So that's depicted there too. But the interesting thing is now the carvings are go around this large rock and you can't fit inside there. So you don't know what the prophecies that are carved into the rock are there. You don't have access to it. But the last one I could see is um the carving of the person hanging. So jumping back to this Sundance, he danced that whole night into the next day, and at 2 o'clock, about around 2 p.m., according to position of the sun, he fell and had that dream. So according to my grandpa, who was there at the age of 10 years old, he said he seen it when he fell out in the center in the lodge. And he said they worked on him for quite a while before they revived him. And but he was dreaming all that time of them soldiers, and they were falling upside down into the camp. And there was a warning given. He said when the soldiers were falling, he said he heard a voice say that, do not take the things of the white man. When you defeat these soldiers, do not take their possessions or anything, or you as a people will always covet their possessions. So, but if you read in history, they didn't listen. They took gold coins from these soldiers, and their hats and their boots and their guns and their ammunition, all of that. So I guess that's why today we covet their things, the material things. Uh, so I've always wondered, like, what would have happened if we didn't do that? I don't know. 'Cause nobody will probably never know. We can just speculate. But these people you see under the rock are walking around looking at the carvings like that. And up on the right side of that rock, there's a place where lightning struck and it left a blue zigzag streak all the way down that rock. And it looked like it's painted, but they said it was from a lightning strike. And then over to your left, not at these rocks, but there's another one that's further back, a group of rocks, and one of them looks like an owl. And on there is the prophecy of um, Crazy Horse dying. It even shows Agent McGillicuddy and his hat, and it shows the soldier stabbing Crazy Horse. And that appeared same time as the Sundance. So Crazy Horse pretty much knew ahead of time that he was going to be killed. So that's the presentation.
Oh, Wopila like she. I mean, that's a lot of knowledge, and I'm glad we have this recorded too, so some of our relatives weren't able to join today. And I think all of this, it just continues to show us how much that what we don't know and your teaching is providing us with knowledge that we can share with the children that we're working with. And we
Mm-hmm.
could show them these teachings and recordings, and they could start to learn and understand and make that connection with our ancestors. And so because
Mm-hmm.
they are helping us and continue to help us. And so Wopila Tonka Lakshmi.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, if anyone has any questions or comments, you can certainly put them in the Q&A, and we have 12 minutes. We can ask questions. Well, everyone's really quiet today. Well, that's okay. This knowledge, again, this knowledge is really important for this work that we're doing with the youth and with the families, and to be able to reteach ourselves what it means to be Lakota. That's going to help them as they transverse through these systems that are made for them. I think one of the things that we know with our Indigenous students is that, especially in the public school systems that are designed not to represent them or to be welcoming and offer that sense of belonging, is that we continue to strengthen their identity as Lakota people, and this will do that. And I already see, like, one of the things we talk about often is the Lakota naming ceremonies, when our children receive their Lakota. And we have a story of one of our tojas. She received her Lakota name in ceremony, and she tells everyone, she's only 5 years old and she is that empowered at 5 years old, and as what her Lakota name is, and she continues to share that in her art, and it just reminds me too of what our elders, constantly visiting with our elders, and some of them aren't here anymore, but they would say that it was hard to be Lakota because you were ashamed, during residential boarding school. And so what you're doing for our children, like is that you're empowering them to be so proud of who they are at a very young age that just imagine this is only them at 5, 6, 7 years old. And when they become seniors in high school, just imagine who they're going to be, our next fluent speakers, our cultural bearers. And not only that, they could, like you said, be teachers, lawyers, medical doctors. They could walk in two worlds. And so.
That's true.
Okay, we have, what was the Lakota name for those rocks you talked about earlier, Lakshmi?
Lakļol Wičhoļ'an. Lakļol is our way of saying those rocks like that, how they're formed. Lakļol is through, Wičhoļ'an is shines. So shines through the rock is how you translate. But the Washita column are the Western people, or I guess it's commonly known, like Devil's Tower is commonly known as deer medicine rocks. DEER, the animal. And I think that's the name that comes from the Cheyenne people.
Wopila Lakshmi. And that sacred site visit is coming up soon.
Well, this isn't a sacred site in a sense that it's not part of the star knowledge, but the one with a Devil's Tower is our Dakota. But this is a spirit historical site, but I guess it could be called a sacred site because that Sundance was held there at that time. And the elderly gentleman that owned the land, he told us that that those poles for that lodge stood there till the 1940s. And then they took the poles down because they made a highway through there. And it's interesting because about a mile up the road north is the Northern Cheyenne Reservation line. And then there's a bar there that is in the Guinness Book of World Records as having the largest pile of beer cans in the world.
Wow. And this in the Guinness World Records?
Yeah, that pile of beer cans.
Oh my goodness. Ugh.
It's like arsenic or white clay at one time. It's called Jimtown.
I don't know if I like that.
Me neither.
Like our white clay though. So we have folks that said Wopila Tonka, Pilama Yaye, Wopila Tonka, Rick. I can't wait for my children to receive their name. Isabella said Wopila Gaka for sharing this knowledge and teachings. Lawrence Wally said Wopila Tonka Tahashi for your extensive knowledge and for sharing. Really enjoyed the history and spiritual knowledge. Wopila. And so, well, today, I guess that concludes today's teaching. And again, Wopila Tonka to Lakshmi Richard Two Dogs Huyamani for sharing his knowledge with us today. This teaching was provided by funding through the South Dakota Humanities Council There will be a short survey that will be sent to your email. So if you have time, feel free to complete that survey that continues to show this, how important this work is in the sharing of cultural teachings.
Somebody raised their hand.
Oh, Lenny Hayes raised their hand. Oh, where'd he go? Here we go. I can allow them to talk too.
Hmm.
Here you go. Go ahead, Lenny. I seen your hand raised and I'm giving you the floor to be able to ask your question.
It was my mistake. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's quite all right. It's quite all right. Well, all right, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to email us, contact us. And again, thank you for your time today. Go ahead.
Also, this will be on the website, right? This teaching will be on your website? Okay. Because I know there's some people that wanted to be on, but they missed.
Yes. It will be on our website and on our YouTube page. And so they'll be in 2 places.
All right. Hechetu.
Hechetu ye well. Doksha ke WičhoÄn relatives. Have a good day.
Sure.